Hey guys, it's Miss Johnson, and I'm here to bring you our third notes video for Unit 4. This is Unit 4 Notes 3, Factoring Trinomials using the guess and check method. Yesterday we talked about a pretty formal method of factoring trinomials where we would split that trinomial up, splitting that b term into two so that we had a total of 4 terms, and that way we could group them. We used the X to set that up, and it was pretty structured and formal, but today we're going to learn a method that's a little bit different, but it's pretty slick and works nicely if you can get your way through it, but it's the guess and check method. We're just going to set up our factors and guess and check what goes into the spots that we need to fill in. So just one thing to consider, or one thing to talk about, this ax squared plus bx plus c, this is our standard form of a trinomial. And what makes it a standard trinomial is just the fact that I have that x squared term in the front. So none of those terms are like terms because I have this x squared and then an x to the first and then a constant. And we typically will write it in that order in standard form, just like we learned back in Unit 3 in the polynomials unit. We want to put that greatest exponent first and then go all the way down. So my a term is the first one with the x squared, b term has the x to the first, and c is the constant. So let's just talk through our steps here. The first thing that we always want to do, with regardless of whatever method we're using for factoring, is take out the GCF. Check for a GCF and divide it out of every term first. Then after you do that, you can set up your factors. Set up your 2 sets of parentheses. This is going to be your factored expression. Okay, so I have one set of parentheses with 2 factors and another set of parentheses with 2 factors. Inside those parentheses, the first 2 multiply to the ax squared. And what I mean by the first 2 is the first term in this factor and the first term in that factor. When you FOIL these, if you remember the acronym FOIL that we learned back in the polynomials unit, that stood for first, well, that's hard to see, sorry, first, outside, inside, and last. Those first 2 terms, those are going to be the easiest ones for you to figure out. I need the first 2 terms to multiply together to give you that ax squared, that first term in the trinomial. Then the last 2 terms, that's going to be the next easiest thing for you to figure out. So these last 2 terms right here, the L, those multiply to give you the C. Okay, those give you that constant at the end. It's the insides and the outsides that we're going to have to do some work to figure out. So putting the insides and the outsides together, that's where we have to get to that bx term. Okay, so pretty easy to figure out the ax squared term. Not so bad to figure out the c term. It's the bx that we're going to have to do a little work to check and figure out if we've got the right factors. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. Now, when I look at x squared plus 5x minus 6, I know I want to factor this. There's no GCF. This is a coefficient of 1, 1, 5, and 6 have no common factors. So I'm just going to set up my parentheses here. Now, here's what I mean about the ax squared term. There is only one way to get ax squared. The only way to get ax squared is with an x times an x. That's the only way that I can do that. So I know that the first 2 terms in my factors have to be x and x. Because x times x gives me x squared, and that's the only way I can get that. Now, the last term, the negative 6 can happen in a couple of ways. It can happen with a negative 1 times 6, or it can happen with a negative 2 times 3, or it could happen with a negative 3 times 2. Those are the 3 different ways that I can get negative 6 for my C term. Now, the fact that I want a positive 5 in the middle, I have to kind of work with these 2 things together. If I want a positive 5 in the middle, I want to look at what's going to add to positive 5. In this case, negative 1 plus 6 gives me that positive 5, so I end up with a minus 1 here and a positive 6 there. And you always want to check, that's the check part of guess and check. If I refoil this just quick in my head, here's my x squared. That's that first term that I'm thinking of. So that gives me the x squared for the first term. Then here's that negative 6. The last gives me the negative 6. So that was the f. if you will, and the L, it's the insides and the outsides that we have to really make sure of. So my outsides are the 6x, my insides are negative 1x, and if I do 6x and negative 1x, I get 5x. So I know that is the b term that I want. I know that that's my factored expression, x minus 1, x plus 6. So you're really just trying to force your way into these factors that are going to give you that original trinomial. Again, start with that x squared term. That's going to be your easiest place to start. So let's take a look at number 2. Number 2, I'm going to look for GCF. 1, 6, and 5 have no GCF. So I'm going to just set up my factors here. I know that the only way I can get x squared is if I have x times x. That's the only way to get to x squared. So I check the last, and here, this is a convenient one too. The only way to get to positive 5 is if I have a 1 and a 5. So I know I'm going to have plus 1 plus 5. And then just check your insides and outsides. Insides make 1x, outsides make 5x, and if I add those together, I get 6x. That's what I want in the middle, so I know that's my factored form. X plus 1 and x plus 5. Let's try number 3, x squared plus x minus 2. Okay, so I'm getting into a negative here, and that's going to make life a little bit more interesting. No GCF to take out, so just set up the factors as they are. That's going to be x and x again, because that's the only way to get to x squared. Now, I need to make sure that I put my negative in the right spot. I know that the only way to multiply to 2 is 1 times 2. So I'm going to put my 1 and my 2 down, but I need to make sure that I put a negative in the right spot. If I put a negative here and a positive there, that gives me a negative 1x, and that gives me a positive 2x. And that gives me a positive 1x for the middle. And that's what I want. If I would have flipped that, let's say I had my positive here and my negative there, I would have ended up with a negative 2x and a positive 1x, and I would have gotten negative 1x in the middle, and that's not what I want. So I know I need to have my negative with the 1 and my positive with the 2, x minus 1, x plus 2. So that's the whole checking piece. We just want to make sure that we, especially those insides and outsides, that's the hardest part to get here, is the inside and outside. All right, well, let's take a look at number 4. Now we're getting a little bit trickier here. Now I have a coefficient in front of the 3x, or in front of the x squared. I have a 3. So the good news about this one is, 1, there's no GCF. I don't need to worry about taking that out. 2, there's still only one way to multiply to get to x squared. I can only get to 3 by multiplying 1 times 3. So I know I'm going to have a 3x and an x. That's the only way that I can multiply those first 2 terms and get to that 3x squared. Now, I have to be strategic about how I get the 5, because I'm going to need negative 2 in the middle. So I know I could have either a 5 and a 1, or I could have a 1 and a 5, and I could have a plus or a minus. So those are kind of my options there. If I do 5 and 1, I'll have a 3x on the outside and a 5x on the inside. And if the 5 were negative, that's what's going to get me to that negative 2. So that's what I need. I need 5 and 1, 5 with the 3, and I'm going to make that 5 the negative and this one the positive. So 3x minus 5 and x plus 1. Now again, you're just guessing and checking here. Had I flipped those, let's say I would have done 3x minus 1 and x minus 5, or x plus 5 even. This inside would have given me a negative 1x. This outside would have given me a 15x. And that would have given me a 14x overall. And that's too much, because all I want is a negative 2. So you're just guessing and checking here. You're just figuring out, how do I force my way into those factors? How do I force those factors into the spots they're supposed to be in? Let's try number 5. So I'm back at a 3x again. No GCF. 3, 8, and 4 don't have anything in common. So I have 3x and x. Now, I can multiply to get 4 in a couple of different ways. I multiply 2 times 2. I can multiply 4 times 1. Those are my options there. 1 times 4 or 2 times 2. So if it helps, you can kind of list them out. I would just list them faintly, especially if you're using pencil. That's really good. But you could do 1 times a 4, a 2 times a 2. You could even put 4 times 1 because that 3 in front is going to give you different results depending on where things are. If I did the 1 and the 4, I'm going to get an outside of 12 and an inside of 1. Outside of 12, inside of 1 would give me 11. That doesn't help me. If I do the 2 and 2, I'd get an outside of 6 and an inside of 2. That gets me to the 8. And note that you want this to be a positive 4 but a negative 8, so you know these are both going to be minuses because that's the only way to get a positive at the end is if you have a negative times a negative. So negative 2 would give me negative 6x and negative 2x, and that gives me the negative 8. Let's just check the 4 and the 1. So outside would be a negative 3, inside would be a negative 4, that's a negative 7, so that's not going to help me. And again, I'm just talking my way through this. I'm just checking the possibilities and making sure that I pick the right one. So now you can kind of go back and erase and pick the one that we wanted, which was this case, the 2 and 2. So let's just check one more time. That gives me 3x squared. That gives me positive 4. So that'll work. And then the insides give me a negative 2x, and the outsides give me a negative 6x, and I put those together and get negative 8x, which is what I want. So 3x minus 2, x minus 2. If you weren't good with FOIL back in Unit 3, you're going to think a lot about FOIL in this lesson. So I hope you get used to that acronym, that's outside, inside, last. All right, number 6. No GCF, 2x or 2, 11, and 5, so nothing in common. I know I need a 2x. There is only one way to get 2x squared, and that's 2x times x. So that's helpful. I also know that all of these things are positive. That's another thing you can check for. If you've got a positive product at the end and a positive sum, you know that these are both pluses because that's the only way to get a positive product and a positive sum. And then I need to check my 5 and my 1. So the only way to get 5 is 1 times 5, but do I want the 1 here or the 1 there? If I put the 1 here, I'd get a 1x and a 10x, and that gives me 11x, which is what I want. So that's my factored form, 2x plus 1, x plus 5. If I would have flipped those, if I would have had 2x plus 5 and x plus 1, you would have had a 5x and a 2x, which would give you 7x, and that doesn't work because that's not what you want. So there you go. There you have it. Again, we're just forcing our way into these factors, guessing and checking. No real scientifically proven thing here, just guess and check. All right, number 7, 4x squared minus 17x plus 4. Life gets a little bit tricky when there's multiple ways to get to that leading coefficient. So one thing that well, first take note, no GCF, 4, 17, and 4, they don't have anything in common. One thing that I take note of, though, is the fact that one thing that strikes me, or one thing that I notice, 4 times 4 gives me 16, and my middle term is a 17, so that leads me to believe that my insides and outsides should be a 16 plus a 1. That's just something that I kind of have a feeling about, because if you break the 4s apart into 2 and 2, the most you're going to get is like 2 times 2, which is 4, and then you add those. You're not going to get all the way up to the 17. So that leads me to believe that I want to get my insides and outsides to be 16 and 1. So I'm going to work with that. So I'm going to say that this is 4x and x because I know I want to take the 4 times the 4. If I put my 4 on the outside here and I put my 1 on the inside here, I want them both to be negative. Let's see if that worked for me. So this gives me the 4x squared. This gives me the positive 4. This gives me a negative 1x. This gives me a negative 16x. And together that's a negative 17x. So that's what I want. 4x minus 1 x minus 4. And again, all I did there was just notice that 4 times 4 is 16. I want a 17, so that must mean I need a 16 and a 1 somehow. Let's try number 8. 5x squared minus 18x plus 9. So no GCF. Only one way to get 5x. That's always helpful. When you have a leading coefficient that's prime and there's only one way to multiply two things to get to that number, that always makes your life a little bit easier. So 5x times x is going to give me the 5x squared. I'm done there. Now 9. 9 has a couple of options. 1 times 9, 3 times 3. I know that I want a negative product and a positive sum, so that means these are both going to be negatives. Or I should reverse that. A positive product and a negative sum, so I know these are both going to be negative. Now, let's see if I want to use the 1 and the 9 or the 3 and the 3. I want to get to 18. So if I have 1 and 9, 5 times 9 is 45. That's going to be way too big. If I have the 9 in the middle and the 1 on the outside, that's a 5 and a 9. That gets me to 13, 14, but that's not quite enough. So let's try the 3 and the 3. If I have 3 and 3, I have negative 3x on the inside, negative 15x on the outside, and negative 18x. So that'll work. 5x minus 3, x minus 3. Number 9, 2 left here. So this is another 4x one. 4x minus 15, 4x squared minus 15x minus 25. No GCFs to worry about. So just set up your factors. Again, this could be 2 times 2 or 4 times 1. This is one that you're going to have to spend a little time on figuring out. Now, the 25 might be a little bit more helpful. That's going to be either 1 times 25 or 5 times 5. Those are your only options for 25. Now, I did 1 times 25. 25 times 1 is 25. 100 would be big. 25 times 2 is 50. So go ahead and knock out that 1 times 25 because I think it's too big no matter what I pair it with. Okay, now this is a negative product, so I don't know which one's going to be negative or positive. I'm going to need both. So if I think about it, 4 times 5 gives me a 20. And then I'd have 1 times 5 in the middle, which would give me 5. And I can do 20 minus 5 and get 15. So that's a good thing to take note of. I'm going to use the 4 and the 1 and see if I can force it that way. Now I want a negative 15, which means I need the negative 20 to be bigger, and I need the positive 5 to be smaller. So that gives me a positive 5x. That gives me a negative 20x, and I get a negative 15. Whew, that's a tricky one. That's when you're just going to have to try a bunch of different things and see if you can figure it out. Always make sure you do one last check before you circle it and make it your final response. So 4x times x gives me the 4x squared. Good. Last terms, 5 times negative 5 gives me the negative 25. Good. Then I did those insides and the outsides and got to the negative 15, which is my b term, so I'm good. 4x plus 5 and x minus 5 is my factored form. One last one, 2, 5, and 2. No GCF. Nice thing here, only one way to get to 2x squared. It's got to be 2x and x. That's the only way to get to that term right there. Also, only one way to get to 2 at the end. But now do I want the 2 to go with the 2 or the 2 to go with the 1? What do I want to do here? So I need a 5 in the middle. If I put 2 over here on the outside and 1 on the inside, this 1 times 2 gives me the 2, which is great. Inside gives me 1x, outside gives me 4x. Add them up, I get 5x, and that's what I want in the middle. So 2x, oops, I didn't put my pluses in, haha. Plus and plus means you're going to have plus and plus, which is good. 2x plus 1 and x plus 2. All right, so that's the guess and check model. Now, I don't care what model you use. I don't care how you factor these things. The guess and check is going to become a lot more intuitive, and you're going to be able to probably go a little bit quicker through some of these questions, especially the ones that have that leading coefficient that is prime or even just an x squared. It makes your life a lot easier. But using the x will work for you every time. So if that's the method that works for you, that's fine by me too. However you want to factor it works. We just want to give you multiple options so that you can use what works best for you. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time.